Hey everybody, John Skiba here, and in this video I'm going to explain to you the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. This can be a complicated one for a lot of people, so I'm going to go step by step what the process is like, what you can expect, and why you might choose to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. But if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, go ahead and click subscribe, check off on that little bell, that way you'll be notified each and every week when I put out new content that'll help you deal with your serious debt problem. All right, let's talk about Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Now, in the bankruptcy world, there's Chapter 13, there's Chapter 7, that's what most consumers file. There's Chapters 11, and even some other chapters that deal with businesses and cities and things like that. But for most consumers, you're looking at either a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 filing. And for most people, the overwhelming majority file Chapter 7. So I want to talk about Chapter 13 because a lot of people ask about it. They're not quite sure what it is, why you would file it, and some of the kind of details of what that process is. So Chapter 13, first of all, compared to Chapter 7, it's a much longer process. It's a minimum of 3 years and can be as long as 5 years. You compare that to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which usually lasts about 4 to 5 months. But in a Chapter 13 filing, you're going to be involved in that case, an active bankruptcy case, usually for 5 years, I should say that. And the difference between whether it's a 3-year or a 5-year case will depend on your household income. Now, if you've been looking into bankruptcy, you may know with a Chapter 7, you actually have to qualify for it. You have to pass the means test if you're going to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And the means test is they look at your household income, the number of people that live in your household, and if you make more than the typical household of your size, then they require you to file a Chapter 13. Now, in a Chapter 13, they're going to look at your income as well, but it's for a different purpose. If you make less than the average family of your size in your state, then you are eligible to file a 36-month, 3-year plan or 3-year Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You're eligible to do that. If you make more than the average family of your size in your state, then you're going to be filing a 5-year plan. You're going to be there for a full 60 months. So right out of the get-go, it's a lot longer process. Not only that, you are required to make at least a partial payment to your unsecured creditors over that 3 to 5 years, depending on how long it is. So the initial stages of a Chapter 13 are very similar to a Chapter 7. There's a ton of paperwork. There's the bankruptcy petition and schedules. Those documents can be up to 80 to 90 pages long. But in a Chapter 13, you're also required to submit a Chapter 13 plan. This plan is your proposal to the court, to your creditors, of what you're going to do with those debts, whether you're going to pay them, whether you're going to discharge them, whether you're going to modify them. And so you put this plan together right from the very beginning, and you begin making a planned payment 30 days after your bankruptcy case is filed. So the big question, obviously, is how much are you going to have to pay your creditors? Now, in a Chapter 13, they break down who gets paid what by a kind of a hierarchy. Now, at the very top are things like administrative costs, like there's a trustee that's involved in your case who's going to be processing all these payments. They get a portion. If you have legal fees rolled into your case, the attorneys will get paid, but so do secured creditors like car loans, home loans. If you owe what are called priority debts, like taxes, past due child support, they'll get paid. And then if there's any money left over, that'll go to your unsecured creditors. These are things like credit cards, medical bills. Now, when we're determining how much your plan payment's going to pay, there's going to be a few things that influence that. Sometimes a lot of people call into my office and just want me to tell them how much it's going to be a month. A lot more complicated than that. First thing we look at is we look at your monthly income and we look at your monthly expenses. The court wants to see how much is coming in and what are your regular bills, your utilities, your groceries, those types of things. And then they look to see, is there any money left over at the end of the month? If there is, that's kind of a starting place of what needs to be paid to your creditors each and every month. Now, the idea behind a Chapter 13 is that you're going to essentially do your best for the next 3 to 5 years, depending on how long your case is. And then at the end of that case, if there's any balance still owed on your unsecured debts, credit cards, medical bills, those will be discharged through the bankruptcy process. So essentially, you're paying what you can for 3 to 5 years, and then at the end, they'll wipe out any remaining balances. That doesn't apply to car loans and home loans, obviously. If you want to keep your car, if you want to keep your house, you're going to continue to make the regular monthly payment on it. And so the starting place, like I said, we look at your disposable income. We look at income and expenses and determine, is there any money left over? We also have to calculate into your plan certain priority debts which must be paid. For instance, taxes. Let's say you had $5,000 of tax debt that you owed when you filed your Chapter 13 bankruptcy. That's going to have to be paid in full during that 3 to 5 year period that you're in the Chapter 13 case. So not only now are we looking at your disposable income, we're looking at priority debts that have to be paid in full. We've got to make sure the plan payment is large enough to be able to pay those taxes or those priority debts in full. The next thing we look at is any non-exempt assets. Now, one of the big benefits to a Chapter 13 is you're not going to lose assets typically. In a Chapter 7, it's awesome because it's fairly short. You're discharging the debt, that goes away. The downside to it is if you have non-exempt assets, the court will come in and they will take those and they'll sell them and they'll give the money to your creditors. And so that's a big reason a lot of people file Chapter 13 bankruptcies, is because they don't want to lose any assets. Chapter 13, you get to keep all your stuff. The trade-off is you've got to make a payment to your creditors over that 3 to 5 year period in order to be able to get your discharge. Well, you get to keep your stuff, but we do look at the value of the non-exempt asset. And your creditors have to get at least as much as they would have received in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So, for instance, let's say that you were filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy and you had a non-exempt vehicle that was worth $5,000. In a Chapter 7, that non-exempt vehicle could be taken by the court, by the trustee, sold, and then the proceeds given to your creditors. Well, if you file Chapter 13, your creditors must get at least that $5,000 that they would have gotten in Chapter 7. Otherwise, the court's not going to approve your plan and your creditors could object to it. So we have to take that into account as well to make sure that we take the $5,000 that they would have gotten out of the Chapter 7 filing and distribute that amongst all 60 payments as well. So those are the big three things that we look at when evaluating what goes into your Chapter 13 plan, how much it's going to be. We're going to look at your disposable income. We're going to look at your priority debts that you may owe, and we're going to look at your non-exempt assets. All of that goes into a calculation to determine how much your plan payment is going to be. So you can see that's why it's a little difficult when people come into my office. I'm a bankruptcy attorney in Arizona, by the way. When they come into my office and discuss, what's the Chapter 13 going to be, the plan payment, it takes a lot of calculations, a lot of information for us to be able to determine that specifically. So that's generally what the process is like. And then you start making that plan payment 30 days after your case is filed, and you're required to make it each and every month for however long your case is going to be. In most cases, it's 5 years. And then at the end of that 5 years, you receive your discharge order from the court that discharges and eliminates the rest of the unsecured debts, medical bills, whatever they pay, that's what they get, and then the rest are eliminated at that point. The one thing also that you have to understand is that Chapter 13 is a fluid process. If your income goes significantly up or down, you can go in and you can actually change the plan. You're actually required to change the plan so that it accounts for all of your disposable income. So sometimes I'll have clients who will change jobs during that 5 years. They make considerably more than they were making before, and then we have to go in and amend or modify the plan to be able to account for that higher income and actually start paying more into the plan from the time when they got the new job. It also works the other way. If you lose your job or if you take a job where there's a pay cut, in the COVID world right now, we're seeing that a lot where people's incomes are going down significantly. Then you're there in a situation where we can go back and amend or modify the plan to be able to account for the reduction in income so that you're not having to pay quite as much. So that's generally what the Chapter 13 process is like. There's a lot of other moving parts to it, but just that gives you a good overview if you're looking at Chapter 13 of what you can expect from that process. The reason why people file Chapter 13, often when I get done explaining it, people say, why in the world would anyone want to do that? First reason is you don't qualify for a Chapter 7 because you make too much money. You don't pass the means test in a Chapter 7, so they put you in a Chapter 13. Second reason is you have assets that you will lose in a Chapter 7 case. And if you, like I said, in Chapter 13, you're not going to lose any assets. You get to keep everything, but the trade-off is you're making that payment for the next 3 to 5 years. Third reason is that maybe you filed a prior Chapter 7 sometime in the last 8 years. Now, when you file Chapter 7, you cannot file another Chapter 7 for 8 years. However, if you filed a Chapter 7 and you received a discharge in your Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you're eligible to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy just 4 years later. So those are the three reasons really that we see people file Chapter 13s, is they don't qualify based upon their income, they're concerned about losing assets, or they filed a Chapter 7 too short a time ago and they're not eligible for another Chapter 7 at that point. So that's the Chapter 13 process. I hope that helps you as you're trying to evaluate this process. I can tell you, if you're looking to file Chapter 13 bankruptcy, you need to hire an attorney. I once spoke to a Chapter 13 trustee who told me that in the extent of their career, they had never seen a Chapter 13 filed by what we call a pro se debtor in a bankruptcy process be successful. There's a lot of moving parts. It can be very complicated. It's complicated for attorneys. I can tell you that because there's so many different things that you need to make sure are in place in order to be successful at it. I am an attorney here in Arizona. We do free bankruptcy consultations. I'd be happy to at least evaluate your situation, let you know if Chapter 13 would be a good option for you. Appreciate you watching today.